Good morning, Dr.
Good morning.
Thank you very much for joining us. Karibu sana. As you see, we fix the nation, one conversation at a time. We want to hear you in your presidential dreams and ambitions. What is it that you want to fix? And what capacity do you have for fixing? We are short of people who have capacity. And we always are looking for the capacity, the person with capacity. We want to see whether you do have the capacity. First, Janet is going to welcome you with the day's quote.
Yes.
Some words that were said sometime by somebody, and let's see whether they make any sense to you today.
Thank you.
Pumla Dineo once said, "A society reveals itself in what it chooses to fear and what it refuses to confront." A society reveals itself in what it chooses to fear and what it refuses to confront. What comes to mind when you hear that?
Well, I mean, in the case of, first of all, thank you so much for having me, and thanks for the opportunity to be here this morning. And thanks for seeing you, Janet. It's been a while since we last met. I took a very good deserved break from public conversations and so on. We're right back in. What comes to mind always is that a society reveals itself most by what it chooses to fear. Societies are described by the choices they make, and for us now, the context of leadership in the country. You know, for example, our country really abhors betrayal, and especially if you look at the history of our country since the struggle for independence and so on. Kenyans abhor betrayal of the country and betrayal of others. And that is why when people have betrayed the country, betrayed the country's aspirations, they are punished very, very hard. And that describes our society. That's why in most cases, if you look at societies like South Africa, for example, or even many societies in Africa, they usually draw a very sharp line between conformity and reform. Do you want to conform or do you want to reform? And that defines society a lot. If you listen to Kenyans very carefully across the country, there's near unanimity in Kenya today that we need to reform. We may have debates and arguments about how that reform is supposed to be done and what we need to do, but I don't think there is any confusion in the minds of many Kenyans that we are not in a good place. Whichever way you decide to poll our opinions, the outcome is the same. The predominant and overwhelmingly a huge number of Kenyans believe, that's why I'm saying this, almost near unanimity, that we need to change. The direction we are taking as a country is not the right direction. And that's how Kenya has defined itself, and that is how Kenya is going to define itself, going forward, whether or not the next decisions we take are going to be about changing our lives or not changing our lives. Secondly, a society defines itself by what it embraces or what it chooses to embrace. Kenyans embrace change, and there's an increasing need for that, especially because the predominant portion of our population is younger, enthusiastic, adventurous, and very innovative. 10 years I served in public service as a cabinet minister. There is nothing I enjoyed or confronted most like change. Because everywhere you go, or everywhere I went, people are not interested in the status quo. They wanted to change. You know, at the Ministry of ICT, we wanted to move away from analog broadcasting to digital broadcasting. At the Ministry of Education, people are sick and fed up of the mismanagement of the education. They want change. The society desires change. And society is very dynamic. So dynamism is what this society embraces. And again, that is how this society defines itself. And that's how it would like to identify itself. Thanks.
It's not every public servant that has presidential ambitions or that thinks that's the next step. Why was that the logical next step for you? What informed your presidential ambition?
Because we need to fix our country. Because, you know, the privilege I have had, and then I call it a privilege, because public service is a privilege. It's not a right. I mean, I didn't have to be appointed a cabinet minister. But as I said before, and I would like to say again, the noblest thing that can ever happen to you as a citizen of our country is to be given an opportunity to serve your country, regardless of the station or the status, whether as a police officer or, as a clerk, a PS, minister, whatever. And I had that unique privilege of serving my country for 10 years as a cabinet minister. And from that privilege, you have an opportunity to actually see the country in its totality and understand the country in its totality. You come to terms and come to understand the capacities and the opportunities available in your country. And like all human beings, and as I said, this is a very dynamic country. It's a very dynamic population we have here. People always want to move forward, to ever move the next stage. When you see our movement stagnate, when you see our movement interfered with or slows down as a result of bad decisions we are making, or as a result of the capacity of those who are making those decisions, then of course the only patriotic duty you have is to seek to help. I mean, if we were under colonial rule today, what would be the most important thing you would do to your country? Carry arms and join the others and fight for the freedom of your country. That's what I would do. And so if we are where we are today, what is the call for this generation to make our contribution to fixing the country? And our contribution is, because we know, we understand, what is wrong and what has gone wrong, and we have the capacity based on that knowledge to fix it. The most patriotic thing to do now is to say, here am I, send me. I want to go in and make my contribution in fixing my country. Right. Otherwise, you could also take the other option of being selfish and then patriotic and lying around and taking the comfort. I would stay. It was very nice to live in Washington, D.C. and drive to the World Bank offices where I was working and drive on good roads and have long weekends at the seafront and so on and so forth. That is very nice, but I don't think it's patriotic. There's a call to duty, there's something that you need to do. That's why I'm saying, if we were under colonial rule today, what would be the most patriotic thing to do? Jomo, Mwai Kibaki and all those people were out there doing whatever they were doing, but they left it. From London School of Economics, they came to build their country. That is it. So those of us who have the opportunity to fix our country, we are saying and telling Kenyans, here am I, send me. I'll go and fix the country.
Yeah. You said that you want to come and fix the country, and earlier you had said there is near unanimity that we're in a bad place. If you were to narrow it down to maybe the top 3 things that you think need fixing, what would they be?
Latif, in January, when schools open, I said the other day, and I'm willing to debate anyone who will challenge me on that, close to between 25 and 30% of school-going kids will not go to school, they will drop out. Because if we do not have enough capitation and we are now asking parents who are taking kids to day schools to pay 9,000 shillings, I can tell you for a fact, and let's be very honest about this, this has nothing to do with politics, it's facts as they are, will not afford to pay that amount of money. And therefore will lose kids who are in school. We have a nice circular from the ministry saying all schools, including sub-county schools, should pay 53,000 school fees. I mean, we know our people. We know the state of our economy in our country. How many parents are going to afford to do that? And you know, we are not a one-child society. We have 2 or 3 kids. And look at how incomes have shrunk. The Kenyan workers today are more taxed than they have ever been taxed since independence. With SHA, with the housing levy, with everything and so on, the level of pain out there is very, very serious. So we are going to witness a reversal of public policy on education that has been there for the last 20 years. So that needs fixing. I honestly think we need to go back to free primary and free secondary education. We can afford it, we afforded it, we just need to manage our country differently and we'll have the resources to do that. Secondly, everywhere I go, I've been having conversations with people, even in my own village. You know, people raise very fundamental issues about the security of the country. Some of them are very basic issues, which are related to, again, how we have regressed, you know, gone back to some of our past problems. I'm not saying that these issues did not exist in the past. They existed in the past, but, you know, leaders came together, we resolved them, worked on this arrangement and so on. I have started hearing recently people telling you from the police department about fuel and police vehicles and they cannot move and so on and so forth. We need to fix that. We worked on that, got into the police car, motor vehicle leasing program. We had a system of equipping the police officers and so on. I talk to public servants all the time, including police officers. When you meet, the truth of the matter is that they are agonizing and they're campaigning about some of the decisions that have been made. The medical insurance for the security sector people, especially the police, honestly is a joke. And so on. We can fix that. We worked on that before, and we can fix it again. Talk to any one young mother around, and people will tell you about Linda Mama and the reliefs they got, as a result of that particular program. Universal healthcare is an ambition for many governments in the South, in the economic South, including our own government. The truth of the matter is this, and sometimes even when there's politics and argument, we need to be also very sincere about things. This administration has tried their own way to address that issue of UHC. Let me put it that way. I cannot start by rubbishing people and insulting them. They have tried their own way, but that way hasn't worked. So it needs to be fixed. We can go back to a way that works or stay on the trajectory that we were on that was working. So this and many others, I could go on until the cows come home. Can you see the joke, Latif, of citizens being arrested in a neighboring country and languishing there, Bob Matiang'i and Nicholas Oyo arrested, languishing there, and we have a government and nobody says anything. I mean, the Foreign Affairs says nothing, government doesn't bother. I don't know whether we still retain respect in the region. We are engaged in every little conflict around as though that is the most important business, yet we are the anchor state in this region. We have enjoyed a position of respect across the board in this particular region. We don't get involved in internal affairs in other countries and support rebels and criminals who are terrorizing people in other countries. We build a relationship. We contribute towards bringing peace and stability in our region because we're the foremost beneficiaries of the same. Yeah. Because you see, we trade, our foremost trading environment and ecosystem is within the region. Now, when you see the kind of things that are happening around, if we are not hobnobbing with rebels in Sudan, we are hobnobbing with criminals in DRC, we are engaged with all manner of people, that is not the way of Kenya, because Kenya has not worked that way. This needs fixing. Yeah,
we'll come back, and you've talked about a lot of issues which we can circle back to, regional politics and the like. Anecdotally, there's still a group of people who, especially young people, who may not feel like a Matiang'i presidency may bring anything that the old guard hasn't brought before, right? You've served in various governments, and so they might say, okay, yes, he worked in different dockets, but he's also part of a system that we need an overhaul on. So my question is, should you be president, what will you tap into in how you led before, and what will you have to renew in terms of how you approach leadership going forward?
Point of correction, Janet. I have not served in previous governments. I served in one government, the Jubilee government, the 10 years of the Jubilee administration. I've not served in any other government. That is the only government I served in. But I've worked in very many other places, and as it were. The only assured thing about life is change and reform. And our level of acceptance of the same will determine our level of success, whether we accept to deal with the dynamism of the society that we are in and the changes, because every generation is called upon to do new things and approach life differently, because life is not static. Those that we've done before, like effective management of what we were supposed to do, we will do. Those that require us to now approach even the system of government differently, we will do. I'll give you a classic example. As we go by, clearly, not just in Kenya, but around the world, you can look at the movement that is going on around the world and look at the debates about governance across the globe. Populations across the globe are becoming more and more demanding of inclusivity in government, that their voices must be heard. Whether it's happening here, in Asia, in Tanzania, everywhere, that is the case. There is no government you will form or work on that will not call upon you or demand you to be much, much more inclusive. In fact, the older system of management of a top-bottom approach is collapsing right before our eyes. So the innovation that we need as we go along, and I think about this all the time, is what are those structures we are going to set up, constitutional and auxiliary, that will ensure greater participation and greater involvement. The public needs to be involved, need to be much more aware of the operations of government. In other words, we're moving further and further away into the culture of open government. And you know, one of the reasons why we're having challenges around the globe, as you can see, is because the new populations across the globe are breaking barriers. They're knocking down inhibitions to information, to access, to involvement, to their voices. So that for me is the centerpiece of what I think about how we need to move forward. Even for Kenya's young people, what are some of those things that we are going to do? I keep asking a question, a very basic question, for example. Why don't we publish, at least to Parliament, not even, you know, people may raise issues about security and stuff like that. Why don't we publish the entirety of our mineral resources record and take it to Parliament so that the register is available? We know, for example, that Nobium is available in Kwale, rare earth is available here, gold is available there. Why is it a secret, you know, at the moment? Why is it something that only a few people know and so on? And you know, we can hide or shark away from that. But as we go forward, we don't know whether someone is going to go to court and, given the nature of our constitution, compel government to engage in that. So if government is not psychologically prepared to operate in the sun, because the next government will have to operate in the sun, we'll have no choice, or else you'll be thrown out. These are the challenges and these are the things I keep thinking about, the changes that we need to work on, how we need to approach government. And in addition to those that we've done before, like, as I said, effective management, doing the right thing at the right time. And all those reforms we worked on, I worked on when I was in the Ministry of ICT, the Ministry of Education, and the Ministry of Interior. Now, more is going to be demanded of us, and I'm ready for it.
Okay. We'll do a dance between future and past, with what needs fixing. Let's go sector by sector. Education, let's start that. It's a docket that you sat on for a while. You've talked about capitation. You see, you know, a good number of students not being able to resume class in January because of the new fees that they will have to pay out of pocket. What would your fix be in a Matiang'i presidency?
You see, the reason why, first of all, I think it's important to trace. You can't solve a problem you don't understand. And you cannot solve a problem whose origin you do not know. So it's important for us to take ourselves back to the origin of this problem. Arguments will be made about the scarcity of our resources, our budget is thinning, we have so many competing interests, and so on. But my response is that is precisely why we need to draw our priorities right. We cannot say we want to be Singapore, we want to be a first world country, and we are not educating our population. This is the thinking, and in pursuit of Vision 2030, this is the thinking behind the reform of our curriculum, so that we go to a competence-based education system or a competence-based curriculum. Now, this requires that we avail more resources for our education sector. What that means is that for every priority you'll have as government, you'll have to make sacrifices. So how will we fix this? We will make the necessary sacrifices in managing the size of government, managing the level of wastage in government, and availing resources for the priorities. Everything cannot be a priority, honestly speaking. For a country our size, the social sector right now is a critical priority. The health and education. And then secondly, whatever resources remain should go to sectors that can inspire growth or sectors that can engender growth. So for the education sector, it is to save resources from wastage and avail more resources to support funding of education, support like capitation and so on, so that then you can give access to the population to go to school. Because you see, this is a question of access, this is a question of completion. Are our kids completing, our education? Because bear in mind one thing, when people don't complete the education cycle and they have already government or anyone has spent resources on them and they get to a point where they drop out, that is wastage of its own.
It is.
And then you waste your manpower as you go along. So the most important thing is to make the sacrifices, avail more resources, more budget resources to support the education system.
From the government wastage perspective, where are those places you see that you could make some, cut some change, cut some wastage, cut some fat, and redirect to education?
Size of government. to start with. I mean, the kind of country we have right now, I don't understand why we have the size of government we have. A size of government is a drain, on public resources. Sometimes poor prioritization of government expenditure and government programs is where you could cut waste. Let me tell you something, and on this particular one, I think this is the surest way I can demonstrate to you that I'm very sincere about this. I'm not saying this as a point of criticizing the current administration. Government is generally, especially governments in the South, are very wasteful. I mean, even when I was in government, there are certain things I saw and I could say, I mean, honestly, we could do without this, and then so on. Or we could save this and save the money, and then so on and so forth. But you see, it's just that every administration manages it differently. This one has taken it to a whole new level. If you have a truckload of advisors and all manner of people and so on, everyone is a big person. And all the overheads that we incur as a result of this movement are essentially wastage. Then secondly, the savings also come from management. Neat, better, and savings-focused management or results-oriented management saves you a lot of resources. In the Ministry of Education, I don't know how much you guys have socialized yourself to this. We worked on something that we worked together with the World Bank called the National Education Information Management System, name is. We were building a digital system of identifying everyone who goes into the Kenyan education system. They will have a UPI, or a unique personal identifier, and they will have that number. They will live with it from the time they enter the education system until they leave at PhD level, wherever it is they will live. Now, when this was interfered with, it means you actually don't have accurate data of the learners and the people you're supposed to spend resources on. And this was interfered with, in my view. I may be wrong on this, but this is my suspicion. Because someone else wanted to issue a new tender and make money. Because I can't see anything sensible, because the way the system was worked on, all that could be done on it would be to improve it, not to do away with it and start a new one called chemis or whatever the case may be. Because all those resources that were spent on NEMIS wasted. And everything that was collected on that wasted. So you start a whole new process again where you're spending resources. That is where neat and the results-focused management comes in. Because in a better management system, you would look at that system and improve on it so that it gives you the result you need instead of doing away with it and coming all over with a new one. So these are some of the things you would do to save the resources and apply your coin to where you need or where they're needed most.
Okay. We'll go into a break shortly, but just still on that education and looking at what has happened in the last 3 years and what was happening previously, you're saying capitation is at a great risk because it's going to reduce and that will impact many learners going to school. That had started, in fact, impacting schools even when you were in government, when you were coordinating ministers and ministries, in terms of delays in disbursement of capitation, in terms of even reduction in actual capitation that hits the school's accounts. Some of it in the guise of it's being retained because it's coming into infrastructure development and so on and so forth. 5,000 shillings is being retained at Ministry of Education level. And the other one is what you're talking about. The ghost schools and ghost students were there even then. What did you do then that is being done differently now that you could do differently in the future?
I can't remember ghost schools in my tenure in government. I can remember the delays. And actually what happened is that when we worked on the 100% transition and we wanted to ratchet up the construction of classrooms and so on, jointly with the support of the World Bank under the CQ program, we were working on building classrooms and expanding. So when we moved, we said we were moving 5,000 shillings, for example, to infrastructure development. It was because we wanted to do massive investment in classroom development, so that it's another way of using the same capitation in a different way as it is. It's not a question of not having it at all. It's a question of using that same capitation in a different way. And when you retain it, you try to deal with certain developmental differences according to regions in the country, so that you tell yourself, for example, you need an additional when we did a census across the country, there are various areas, of course, because of the inequalities in development, the various regions of the country, you'll find you'll need more classrooms because of populations and so on in one area of the country than another area of the country. So moving 5,000 shillings to that infrastructural development is a way of ensuring that you put enough classrooms in areas where you don't have classrooms. But it was not removal of the money completely from the capitation system. Delay, I could understand, especially during an election.
That way, Dr. Ari, in not the intended consequence, but the result. When there is delayed capitation disbursement, and when the money comes short of the 5,000 and some others, then the impact on the ground is that parents are being told to pay more.
And schools
and the education ministers, even the late Professor George Magoha, was constantly berating school heads not to increase school fees. School fees were being increased and school heads were arguing that it's because the government is not sending the money it ought to be sending. So there was delayed capitation and there was reduced capitation and funding for education. Let's take a break, come back and respond on that. Dr. Fred Matiang'i, who is a presidential aspirant, under Jubilee, he's a Jubilee flag bearer and torch bearer in the presidential race, and also the deputy party leader of that party, is our guest this morning. We are asking what he wants to fix if he becomes president, and asking what is the capacity in fixing those. Back in a moment.
Hey, Mariam.
Wow, you've done very well.
Thank you. You can send us one as well.
Some feedback just before we pick up the conversation from the question Eric had asked. The Masai Moran is asking, kindly ask Dr. Matiang'i his preference of a running mate among the pool of frontrunners in the United Opposition. We will come to United Opposition matters. Then we have, if you become president, will systems and institutions be allowed to carry out their mandate without interference from the presidency or anyone associated with it? That's Charles Ndungo.
Absolutely.
Right. And I think the rest are, really just saying, Mr. Fix-It. Is Mr. Fix-It, does it come with baggage as much as it comes with a badge of honor, the nickname Mr. Fix-It?
Well, I'm trying to get used to many things. Let's be frank here. I'm trying to get used to many things. And well, sometimes it's honestly speaking, it's an honor. It's flattering to know that, you know, members of the public or other people have got that measure of confidence that you bring a bit or a lot of change in their lives, in the way things go. But I think it's mainly born out of the fact that, again, when I had the privilege to serve, I had the privilege to sit at the front row seat when we were driving some of the most radical reforms in government. And I don't take absolute credit myself. I thank God that I had the opportunity. But again, I also thank my colleagues. We were a huge team of people in every docket. I worked with a lot of dedicated, very disciplined public servants,
to make it happen.
To make it happen, and very committed and very clear president who was very clear in his mind on what he wanted to achieve and allowed you to do your work.
Yeah. Sanjaran Septa says, I sure hope that Matiang'i's time in studio is not limited to 1 hour. Yes, it's 2 hours, but it's a short time, the 2 hours. That's why we want to move quickly.
Yes.
Among the issues that you said you'd like to fix, 1 is education, 2 is health, 3 is security and the rule of law, and then also our diplomatic relations. Those are the ones that you said, but there are very many other things that are ailing this country. Like you said, there are very many others. You just picked top of your mind. Let's just conclude on the education one. And you said you'd like to take the country back to full funded, free primary and day secondary, and I think secondary education. And the pushback here was that even by the time you were leaving government as the coordinator of government operations, the quasi-prime minister, the school funding had already started experiencing challenges. And school heads were constantly complaining about delays in the disbursement of capitation and reduction in the amount of money that's arriving at schools.
As I said, Latif, thanks for the question. As I said, quite frankly, I can't remember cases of delays. If there were delays, there were those ordinary, what I call ordinary inordinate delays. For example, like during an election year, in the budgeting cycle, Obviously, the first entity that takes a lot of resources and attention is electoral preparedness and the resources that you're going to put in elections. So you will have some slight delays. In times when you are engaged in critical national actions like during COVID-19, some of your attention will be paid to meeting some of those immediate challenges, so you'll have slight delays. So those are not what you may describe as inordinate delays or cases where you have policy challenges that cause the delays. And I would not describe those ones as a problem, at all.
From where I start,
in the cases of
it was all over in the news all the time, school heads complaining about delayed capitation and unions joining in that voice. Maybe it did not get to your office, but it was there in the public. And the public is the one that was covering that by actually paying extra school fees. So I'll remind you that the Cabinet Secretary for Education, Professor George Magoha, would at the opening of schools tell school heads, do not increase fees. The school heads would respond by saying, we are not increasing fees, we are charging fees because the government is not sending the money on time.
To be very frank with you, Latif, and then it's always good to be respectful of facts. We didn't have this problem of capitation, and if there were any delays, as I said, there were not inordinate delays that I would write home about. The question of school fees, both myself and my late colleague, Professor Magoha, were distinguished for the hands-on approach we took to the management of education. My colleague, Professor Magoha, walked into schools, walked into classrooms and, accounts offices and so on. I walked to schools, I went to accounts offices, I asked for receipts and so on to be sure that parents are not overcharged in schools. And the reason why we were very categorical about overcharging of parents and so on is because we knew the resources were there all the time. And we worked on this again and again. I do not think, to be absolutely sincere with you, that we had anything I don't remember that even in my tenure as a coordinator of government programs, I don't remember that as one of my problems. Because you see, if it was an issue, if you asked me today whether that was an issue, that was not one of my problems, really, or something that came up. I remember one time, actually, Professor Magoha and I were in some schools in Eastland when we were talking about infrastructure development, where we were even scolding education officials for the slow movement of money. We had money and we didn't want to come to the end of the budget year and the money is not moving even for infrastructure. Several times I personally worked with Professor Magoha to move money to schools. Like I remember cases of Bomet County, for instance, where we had money allocated for infrastructure work and it was not moving as fast as we thought it ought to have moved. And then many others. So the unavailability of the resources, that was not the issue. The movement of the 5,000 and so on for infrastructure, that I have explained that, and again, the records are there for anyone to refer to, especially when we started working on infrastructure development for schools and so on. The records are there. The focus was because President Kenyatta was keen about ensuring 100% transition. And so we had done the census, we know the classrooms we needed to do, jointly with members of parliament through the CTF program. We focused on ensuring that, the classrooms were available, because that's how we were preparing for the new changes in the curriculum. So it wasn't a problem. The reason why it is a problem right now is because resources have gone to so many other activities, and of course, logically, what do you expect? They will not be sufficient to service the critical areas. Okay,
let's move to interior. Because you also say that there's records. I think whenever these questions come up about your tenure as Interior Minister, you say it's on record. But under your tenure, there were reports of extrajudicial killings, the discovery of bodies in River Yala. Is there any responsibility that you personally accept?
No, because you see, today, actually I was counting this last time when I was member in this, and I knew you would ask me this question. So I counted how many times I've answered it. Today's going to be the 6th time I'm talking about it in public. In the security sector, and I want to go over this very slowly, the most demanding of responsibilities for any government is security sector responsibilities. One, because the president's foremost responsibility constitutionally is to protect the lives of the people of Kenya. And secondly, then the president vests some of that in his Minister for Interior and Coordination of National Government in our case, who actually sits in the office of the President, who's a minister in the office of the President. And then the minister coordinates. I'm careful about my words, not supervisors, because we're in the context of a new constitution where the police department is an independent institution under the law, superintended over by Chapter 15 commission called the National Police Service Commission. The minister actually, unlike it used to happen in the past, the minister cannot willy-nilly appoint, fire, or move a police officer of any rank under the law. So what happens is the minister coordinates on behalf of the president and then reports to the National Security Council. And responsibilities in the security sector are both individual and collective. And that is why, I don't know whether people know this, the police have got, this size of standing orders that guide actions of the police and so on. Because the theory or the ideology of policing in our country is civilian supervised, and it's intended to keep law and order. Because we are not in a hostile environment, we are not at war. So the role of the police is basically to keep law and order and to keep the country secure. What that means is that the police are trained, hired, and they know that every responsibility they take is graduated either at a collective level, that's why the commander takes responsibility, or some of it is individual in terms of how they act from one point of time to another. So crimes happen. And that is why the police have standing orders. It's because everyone knows that an individual police officer may actually act outside of the law or outside of the standing orders. Just like even in a church, the clergy have got canonical provisions on how they will conduct themselves, so that when a member of the clergy is involved in an extramarital affairs, is disciplined based on those particular laws. Also, in the security sector, that is how it works. That is why in the police department, there is what is called an orderly room proceeding. When police have done certain things, they are disciplined within the police service. In the case of the military, it's a court-martial and so on. So when actions happen, and most of these actions are criminal or they are against the law, then the law takes its course. I said this several times before, I'm saying it again today, and I'll say it all the time in my life, that when actions have taken that are against the law have taken place in government, we go to investigations and go the direction the investigations take us. The Minister for Interior is not above the law. I have actually never been above the law in all my life. Even when I was Minister for Interior, I was never above the law, because the law is very clear. If you commit certain offenses, you are prosecuted. And every time we acted, for me and many other ministers in government, that is why we have the Office of the Attorney General. When you are not sure about what you are doing, you consult the Honorable the Attorney General. The Attorney General, in many cases, for example, Professor Githu Muigai, a fantastic lawyer that everyone knows, or retired Justice Kiara Kariuki was our Attorney General, a fantastic guy, very respected jurist. We would go to them, and Justice Kiara will tell you, on this particular one, you only have sentiment, you don't have the law with you, so you can't act, or something like that. So let me go back to the case of Vayara. Reports came, as I've said before, that bodies have been found. Just like reports come and say a body was found in a trench near Kawasukari, or bodies were found, 2 bodies were found in a trench on Mombasa Road or some other place. The first action is investigation by the police. When it happens at a scale that is worrisome, it actually immediately captures the attention of the national security infrastructure. First through the National Security Advisory Committee, NSAC, and then the National Security Council. This matter came. The DCI, the National Security Council, which is chaired by the President, demanded of the police and the DCI of answers on what was going on. Then, at that particular time, we even explored the possibility of an inquest, because if you don't understand what is going on, you have to open a fully-fledged inquest to see whether it's a systematic action that is going on, like now in the case of Shakahola and so on. That demanded a fully-fledged inquiry to find out what was going on. So in this case of Rivayala, we even as NSC asked it, can we actually have a fully-fledged inquest into this particular matter, chaired by a magistrate or whatever the case may be? But then the police said, no, but we have bodies. You see, when you have bodies, it means you have a point of departure to conduct investigations. We will examine the bodies, we will do post-mortem, we will get the reports, and we will open the files. Because if we have the body of a guy called Mr. XYC, and then we have the report, we go now to start investigating, go to his family and say, where was this fellow? Where did he disappear? And what happened? And so on. We piece the pieces together. And finally, conduct an investigation that points out to us how this person met their death and how their body was found in River Yala. Now, when the police said that an investigation would begin, that is why, and again for the 6th time today, I'm going to say, if anybody is in doubt or does not trust the work of the DCI, let us have a public inquest. I'm willing to go there tomorrow myself, and anyone else who was involved. And I hope even all members of the National Security Council that I served with, so that every one of us says what they know. Because when you go before that inquest, you will say what you know. This is what I know, this is my role. And then a determination will be made who actually has responsibility for this.
That is true. Who has responsibility for this is a big, big question. I think the police service obviously has a lot of questions to answer here, and we do hope to find justice for those people. But then it's hard not to thread several things at the same time. The River Yala killing, bodies, so many bodies that were found, the killings of the Kianjokoma brothers, again in police custody, and then flimsy excuses as to how they died and all of that. It became a huge case of public interest, and one of the very first that was very loud during the COVID times. There's that as well. Then there's other national security issues. Now, while there is the fact that the police are independent and they operate independently and they have their chain of command, and like you said, they have their standing orders, there's also the fact that policy is set from ministry at the same time. Then there's the National Security Council, which you also sat on as Cabinet Secretary for Interior at the time. When you see these things happening, as much as you may not be directly in command of the police, you're not in command of the police, they have their own operating procedures and their standing orders. From a policy perspective, and just looking at that happen, why still sit in the Interior ministry while seeing these things happen? Bodies in River Yala, Kianjokoma brothers being killed while in police custody. What is why still be a part of that?
Let me explain this, and I don't mind how many times I will address this until it's properly and clearly understood. You see, it's not public policy. It's not even policy in this country, past, present, and I hope even in the future, that police kill people or police enforce the law violently. Or when police kill people in the line of duty, or they do it in a manner that is unexplainable, it's a criminal offense. And when it's a criminal offense, it is handled as that, as a criminal offense. I want to draw a line. Let's go to, for example, the Law Society of Kenya. Let's argue around the Law Society of Kenya, for example, or even the teaching profession. The Honorable the Attorney General is the titular head from time to time of the legal profession in the country, and therefore the person who deals with the Law Society of Kenya. From time to time, you will have cases where lawyers have squandered clients' money. The LSK disciplines them and removes them from the advocate's role, or whatever the case may be. So are we supposed to punish the Attorney General because an advocate ate clients' money? Because that's why we have the law and we have procedures. Hold on, kidogo. In the Ministry of Education, from time to time, you actually come across cases where some teachers, and in our case, in the case of Kenya, it's very, very minimal. A teacher would have a relationship with their student, which is not allowed under the Code of Conduct, and then they are sanctioned. Or a teacher canes a student, which is not allowed, and unfortunately, something happens, a life is lost, and so on. It is not public policy, first of all. It's not a policy decision. In fact, there is no room in Kenya's law and Kenya's constitutional framework for the minister to make a policy decision on the conduct of police affairs. You know, under the law, even when you want to engage. Right now, the current constitution as it is, as Minister for Interior, you cannot actually order the Inspector General of Police. When you want to address the Inspector General of Police on certain matters, you write letters. And I've said several times before, for the entire time I was Minister for Interior, I wrote 3 letters. And each one of them, I had to pass it through the Attorney General to tell me whether I'm within the law. Because it was asking the Inspector General, one of them, for example, that we now need to do a digital record of police officers in the country, do a census, and have a digital record of police officers in the country. And, I had tried to ensure that it doesn't look like you're directing the Inspector General of Police. The point I'm saying is this. We cannot evade responsibility when crimes are committed. But at the same time, we can also not politicize them and generally use them to lynch people just because it's politically convenient to do so. That's why I'm saying, let's have an inquest. When an inquest is held, it's a public affair. And you go there. And if they say, okay, there was dereliction of duty because as a minister, you did not do A, B, C, D. This matter came to your attention here, and it continued for 10 months, and you had not taken a decision. If it's an incident that comes to your attention, it is investigated and it continues. How is that dereliction of duty?
My question is, these are systemic issues. You're right, it is not in any standing order. There's no policy that allows police officers to kill people or that allows state agencies to dump bodies in River Yala, but it is a systemic issue. It goes beyond 1 or 2 incidences that you can just say, you know what, there's bad actors. It is systemic. The number of bodies there, still we don't have full numbers. The inquest, we don't have, a full ending on, a full report on, what happened there. As far as the Kianjakoma brothers are concerned, that was just not even at the beginning, a symptom of a much larger issue of police excesses, use of force, extrajudicial killings, and so on and so forth. In police custody, we learned that up to 30 people die in police custody that we don't know about on an almost yearly basis, if I'm not wrong. Things like that are very scary. So then when you sit in the cabinet, in the docket that is in charge of security, and there are these systemic issues, why still sit there? Even if you, A, don't have any direct control or command like we have established over the police, why still sit in there when there are those systemic issues that are, facing the country? And then again at the National Security Council, where ideally you should be addressing these, there's clearly a big lapse in how we address national security issues. There is one right now, there has been one in the past. So what is the reasoning for staying in a docket where clearly there are these systemic issues that you're not capable of fixing because as a cabinet secretary, you may not have the power?
Mariam, I want to explain something again. It is not systemic, my dear. When something is systemic, it means it's officially sanctioned. It is part of an institutionalized way of operation. It is not systemic. I cannot describe it as systemic by any stretch of imagination.
It may not be officially sanctioned,
the best way to say it is...
But it definitely happens with the knowledge of the state. It may not be officially sanctioned on any paper, but I don't think these police officers operate outside the law entirely of their own volition. They are doing so at someone's behest. There are things, there are strings being pulled behind the background to protect them. That is why we don't get full answers. So yes, it is not on paper anywhere, but certainly it is entrenched in the system. Like we've known of police squads that are used to kill people. They have existed time immemorial in other countries. Here, they are disbanded, they disappear, they die. Another one comes up, takes a different name, takes a different force. And
so you're asking why stay where you know the rot is?
Yes, why stay where the rot is?
It's time for a break when it's such a pertinent question.
Again, let me go back on this particular issue. First of all, as I've explained to you, and I hope that you give me enough time to explain it, it is not systemic. A systemic issue is where it is officially sanctioned, people know it is happening, and they do it for particular purposes. If it happened in a systematic manner, in a systemic way, when I was not the Minister for Interior, that I cannot respond to. But let me tell you one thing. I have emphasized this before, and I will emphasize it again. I have never, ever lived above the law. What that means is that when an investigation is done, those people who are pulling strings behind that you're talking about, a clear, objective, and robust investigation will reveal them. If a minister, for example, gave an order or gave a direction or asked police officers to do certain things that are illegal, the investigation will point to that particular minister. And there is nowhere to hide for that minister, however powerful they may be, because some of those criminal acts are not even covered by the statute of limitation. You can leave office today and retire and go sit under a tree for 10 years and you'll still be hounded before a judge over actions that happened in 1975 when you are Minister for Interior. So the point I'm making is this. In my view, I may be wrong on this, but I have to be respectful of other people's views, because that is exactly what public leadership is all about. You respect others' views. I want to be respectful of other people's views. The truth of the matter is that I cannot deny or shirk, hide or bend from public responsibility or actions that have happened that are criminal. If they happened and the investigations have been done, some of those files are open. There are areas where, for example, Jana, just a minute, there are areas where investigations take 17 years or even 18 years to come to get culprits. Let's pursue these investigations and let us go, for heaven's sake, the direction investigations will take us. Sometimes we lose out on these things when we over-politicize them, and then, you know, people shoot them up, use them as political advantages or political opportunities.
Fair enough.
Instead of actually addressing the issues as it is.
Let's go into the break. But the one thing that I'd like to pose to you, because you talked about patriotism that is driving you to want to become president. Global best practice includes law and moral. Okay? Under your watch, as a Cabinet Secretary for Interior, bodies turned up in Yala. Under your watch, as a Cabinet Secretary for Interior, the young Kenjo Commodore brothers died, and many others died extrajudicially, and others died as a result of criminal activities, for example, in Kerio Valley. Others, as you came to discover later after you had left office, I'm assuming you're discovering later with the rest of us, turned up dead in Chakahola. Under your watch, Dr. Matiang'i, thousands of people died in ways that cannot be explained by any stretch of law. Does it weigh on your conscience?
I would like to explain something, even as we go for a break. Please, let us be very careful about sometimes how we address ourselves with this issue. You know, Latif, when you say under your watch, it means you are actually seated there and you were sanctioning, or you knew for sure, in and of your own, as a responsible person, you knew this was happening.
Let me rephrase it.
And then you did nothing.
When you were in office,
under your watch.
When you were in office, duly exercising your oath of office.
Yes.
To protect this constitution and to serve the people and to ensure the security, people died. Does it weigh on your conscience, Dr. Matiang'i?
What did I do? That is a question you should ask me. What did I do? Did I act responsibly or irresponsibly? Because the line is usually, the line of responsibility and even that line of morality is drawn by the red line of responsibility.
So we'll come back and answer. We're going into overtime. It's a minute past 9 a.m. So we'll come back and you'll talk about whether or not it's weighing on your conscience, how you would change policing culture if you were given the presidential ticket, and so on and so forth. But we are with Dr. Fred Matiang'i, fixing the nation one conversation at a time. We'll be back in just a moment to continue this conversation. Matiang'i in conversation, Jubilee Deputy Party Leader, Presidential Aspirant. We are really trying to get that information and answers from his time at the Interior. He has said he's answered 7 times. I feel like, Dr. it's one of those things that will keep coming up. And Mariam was just saying during the break, I think right now these matters are so urgent, especially because they're playing out again in real time. You've explained, you've kind of broken down the who was responsible for what and where your mandate comes in and somebody else's. Eric had asked just before the break whether it weighs on your conscience. And I think we can transition out of that because we do need to move to United Opposition Matters. And a lot of people are asking, what is his plan for debt, you know, to read us out of debt? People want to know some of your plans to improve matters in the country. But yeah, I think as we conclude on this matter, and he was saying something during the break about how come nobody has asked for a public inquest, and what is it that you have done in your capacity?
You see, the question, I don't mind how many times I answer the question, because, you know, public responsibility is public responsibility. And you know, members of the public have got a right to ask questions, because you can't lead people without answering their questions. You just have your questions come up again and again. I have no problem answering the question even 100 times at all, because you see, there's nothing, you know, I'm hiding from or shirking from as a situa. The point is that unless these issues, because the challenge that we've had over the years, and when I was in the Ministry of Interior, some of my senior colleagues, especially the trained security officials, I remember one of the generals I worked with used to say, the worst thing you can do to a country is politicize security matters. It's when we politicize security matters and then always use them as a basis of political contestation and political judgment. These are issues that are clear, they render themselves to investigation. In fact, this administration came to power promising a commission of inquiry on state capture. And I have been waiting, and they said at that time I would be one of the people to go before that commission of inquiry. I've been waiting for that commission of inquiry myself, just as have been several of my colleagues in the previous administration. Because in life, you have to live with this expectation that you are going to be accountable for the actions that you engage in as a public officer. In the case of these crimes that have been committed, in the case of these violations that have been committed, the $60 million question will always be, what did you do as an individual actor in that particular point in time? Because that's where your responsibility begins. If investigations have been done, some of them conclusively, and some of them individuals have been punished, in some cases some individuals have been sanctioned because of those actions, honestly, that is the responsibility that you have. I remember an incident when I was, when Matiang'i Njeru was the chairman of IPOA, the Independent Police Oversight Authority, and I had just become Cabinet Secretary for Interior. And Macharia came to see me, asked a meeting with the commission, which I immediately granted. And then they told me at that particular time about the frustrations they were facing on certain investigations they were engaged in with the police. I called in the Inspector General of Police. I said, you know, under the law, I cannot direct you, but we must create an ecosystem where we facilitate each other's work. So if IPOA is looking for information on these police officers and this has happened, the best we can do is to ensure that we provide that information. I mean, IPOA is not existent for decoration. It's existent so that it can take decisions. And since that time, we started working on building an ecosystem of interinstitutional relations that facilitates this. And I can say this without fear of contradiction, that for the entire time I served in the security sector, we built a very solid multi-agents action framework led by the president, then who was the chairman of the National Security Council, where intelligence was shared across the board. We worked very well across the board, respecting every institution and as they were carrying out their mandate. Were there cases where we felt that the crimes had been committed by individual officers? Of course, I will not pretend here and lie. Did we investigate this case and actions taken? We investigated most of them and actions were taken. I don't want to embarrass people here and say here on live TV. There are cases where I was, you know, sometimes in Coast where a woman confronted me outside a police station in Coast and she filed a complaint. I need to protect people. But I called the Inspector General of Police standing right there. And we agreed with the Inspector General that we now need to ensure due process is followed in the investigation. That was done. The officers involved were brought to account and so on. But on the flip side of this also, let us not engage in mass lynching of police officers or the police as it were, or security sector people. Because if you have 120,000 police officers, and maybe even if it is 100 or 200 or 20 of them who are involved in an activity, that doesn't describe the character of the entirety of the security sector as it were. Do we have challenges, aberrations, violations of the law, even within religious setups? We do. What do we do? So that's how life is. What do we do? When we meet them, I can take responsibility if somebody brought an issue to me and there was uncontrovertible evidence that Mariam was involved in it and Mariam was working for me and I did nothing on Mariam. But you see, where investigations have to be, then I will have failed in my duty. If you come and tell me Mariam is working for me and you come and tell me Mariam has committed ABCD and I do nothing about it, then honestly I should even resign. I have no business holding that position. But if you come and say Mariam has committed this, she works for you, what say you? I'll say, pull out the law. What does the law say? Right. The law says Mariam is processed through this due process and action is taken. That is it. Otherwise, for me, the conscience I have is doing the right thing. That then, now and always, there will be a call to act right and do the right thing following the law.
Right.
And I will walk that path.
We want to get into now siasa manenos, but just before that, the deportation of Miguna against court orders. When you say, you know, if it's something that was done in personal capacity, I know you've said previously that you didn't receive the court order. But you tell us. Yes, Miguna, the courts did find that his deportation was unlawful. You are again Interior CS at the time. That was your docket to declare him, I forget the term, but basically...
Persona non grata.
Persona non grata. Is that the legal terminology? Yeah.
You know, I don't know what I'll ever do to be able to deal with this.
Sorry, closer to the mic. Yeah.
Once and for all. Now it has become a point of amusement for me. And it's amusement because the court has pronounced itself several times on the matter. The supposed violation of a court order, I have been a competent court of jurisdiction, the Court of Appeal at 3-judge bench, has found out that I did not violate the court order. The matter has been explained several times. Now, I don't know why we keep going back to it. I think the populist nature of it sometimes prohibits people from understanding the matter in its own context. I am the first one to tell you that I deported a lot of people as Minister for Interior. Many of them, for criminal activities, non-Kenyans who were engaged in all manner of monkeying around and so on. The case of Miguna was fairly straightforward, and as I've explained before, I actually cannot see any violation. And I would like to ask journalists, including you guys, before you address this matter, please spare yourself some time. Go to the files and read some of the existing literature on this matter. Read the judgment by the High Court by Justice Lenaola on citizenship acquisition. Talk to some people at the Immigration Department on, when the new constitution kicked in, how will you regain your citizenship? If you had renounced your citizenship, the process is there. We've gone through that drama, I don't know how many times in my life. That piece of paper that is prescribed, to this day, by the way, even as I sit here before you today, Mariam, that is the same piece of paper people feel to regain their citizenship. It has never changed because it's provided for in the law. You cannot circumvent it. You cannot go around it. Right. And so I just don't see what my crime is on this matter, yet people keep coming back to it and so on and so forth. I guess I have many other weaknesses that people could dwell on.
Yes.
So find them and dwell on them, because that is a matter that has been settled and sorted out.
So when this,
we go into
the contempt of court ruling was overturned, but on procedure, not on merit, if I'm correct. On procedure, not on merit, meaning that it was the way it was
done and handled.
Yeah.
Okay.
On the not on the merit of the case, but on the procedure of the case.
The technicality.
Yeah, on a technicality.
The process used to convict Dr. Matiang'i,
yes,
and his co-appellants was fatally flawed.
Was fatally flawed, not on the merit of the actual deportation case.
We can sit here and split hairs the whole morning, and I don't know. I can't pass judgment myself on when a court is right or wrong, because that's not within my province. All I know is that a competent court made a decision on this matter, and for heaven or hell's sake, I honestly think there are many other things that we need to do in this life than concentrate on that particular one incident. And I don't know why that particular one incident that has been explained over and over and over again, and especially when I don't know why people don't.
We can pivot, but let me explain why. It is because it speaks to a respect for the law, of systems and things like that. Speaks to the same issues as those of like extrajudicial killings, etc. It's just, are you willing to be a part of an administration that wasn't straightforward about certain things? But
and
we can move on to other things.
Into other things.
The reason why these questions will keep being asked of you, and they will be asked over and over and over again, is because as we look into the future and we're looking to a possible Matiang'i presidency, we do have to contend with what Matiang'i as cabinet secretary, who Matiang'i as cabinet secretary was, and what that leadership style looked like.
That's not a bad segue. If we're to ask Dr. Matiang'i, because we're going into now politics, I did want to ask about how opposition seems fragmented, but he'll answer that in a moment. It's also to speak to how you're taking all this and carrying it forward to say, in my presidency, these are the things that will absolutely not happen under my watch. Under my presidency, I will fix this broken system. How are you navigating now, thinking through the questions that Mariam is asking that you're not asked again in 7 years?
You know, by the way, Janet, the very unfortunate situation, and please allow me to be very blunt on this matter, The very unfortunate situation is that in most cases, in public affairs, especially some of my colleagues or some of our friends from the media fraternity, people come into some of these debates or come into these issues like this issue of Miguna with an astounding level of ignorance. Because you see, when you talk about the law being followed, there are two tracks of actions that I've taken. So when was the law followed and when was the law not followed? We could never have acted in that kind of manner if we didn't have the law protecting us. You have a prescription as a Minister for Interior on how people regain citizenship. You cannot go outside of it. You just have to follow that particular prescription. And we are signatories to a lot of international conventions on how people travel. The law is very clear on how people travel and come into the country. When someone arrives at the airport and they want to enter the country using an ID card, so when is the law followed? When you do not deny him entry or when you allow him entry with an ID card? You know, the question of saying following the law is also, in this particular case, a very tendentious and sometimes almost amusing arrangement. When people keep saying the law was not followed. Which law was not followed? Because you see, as a public officer who's acting at that particular time, when are you following the law and when are you not following the law? So are you following the law by allowing someone to come in with an ID card which is not allowed? Or are you following the law when you are saying, no, you cannot come in with an ID card because you're not allowed to do that? You see, this is why I keep saying we can sit here and split hairs the whole morning on this particular matter. Yet, I even gave an example the other day in another interview. When that drama was playing out that evening, Governor James Orengo called me, who was then the lawyer. And you know, by the way, you don't go higher than that in terms of legal competence and prowess in this country. Orengo is one of our finest lawyers in this country, by all standards. And he asked me, Fred, is there a way we can end this drama? I asked him back, you know, your senior counsel, Wakili, just give me even the simplest excuse under the law I can hang on and get this guy out of the airport. And he himself told me there is none. He has to fill that piece of paper. Now, so when was the law followed? When you are saying follow the procedures that everyone follows, or you implement the same law that says you cannot come in on this particular basis. And then, Janet, if you give me time, you bend over backwards because the interest of the citizen in resolving the problem is in some of those extra miles you are traveling to resolve the matter. You take Nyayo House to the airport for him. You literally take Nyayo House to tell the Director General Immigration and everybody. Because you see, every citizen in this country, every citizen, if one Kenyan citizen was in danger in Senegal, or there was fighting in Sudan and one Kenyan was in danger, that is the responsibility of government. So it doesn't matter that you go and take the whole Nyayo House to him at the airport. And even then, he's not cooperative. So what are you then supposed to do?
Dr. Ari, let's let it rest just because we are going to run out of time. We don't have you for too much longer. The initial question I have, Mariam and Eric will come in, is the opposition is showing cracks. It seems fragmented. There's even two very critical figures of this opposition that seem to be at loggerheads, yourself and Rigathi Gachagua. Is the opposition fragmented?
No, I'm not aware of it.
You're not aware?
Yeah.
So I think the public perception, and this is why you come in to clarify, is on the issue of DCP and its popularity versus Jubilee and its popularity. Jubilee, which you belong and you're now the deputy party leader, has given you the mandate to go and engage with the other political parties. When the leadership of Jubilee met in Murang'a just 2 weeks ago, the party leader, Uhuru Kenyatta, said and told the delegates of Jubilee and those present, let us stop attacking Rigathi Gachagua because he is a leader, just like all of us. Rigathi Gachagua on Sunday gave an interview, and he said, yes, indeed, I saw what the president was telling, the former president was telling them, and I agree with him. But I still see others in the party still attacking Rigathi Gachagua and DCP. Why are we fighting? So as a deputy party leader, not now as Dr. Fred Matiang'i, as deputy party leader of Jubilee, how would you respond to the leader of DCP who feels that there are some in your ranks who are still attacking him and his party?
You know, I'm amused. You know, some of these things actually don't even speak to logic. So that's why I don't like spending my time on such things. Because you see, we are spending our whole morning on conversations, views, perspectives. We chose democracy. And the democracy means people express themselves differently and express themselves how they choose to express themselves. And democracy does not allow for cultism, you know, and creating cults and so on. People ask the questions of anybody, including me and everybody else. You know, they will ask questions of their leaders. And that does not mean anything. I mean, I think you have exaggerated the position of my party leader, because my party leader did not say stop attacking so and so because he's a leader. He just said he does not want party members to concentrate on personality conversations as opposed to promoting party principles and building cohesion. He was not particular about, he didn't even point out that so and so is a leader and so on and so forth. I don't think he did. But you see, Latif, let me be very honest with you. If I wasn't in public leadership, I would use stronger adjectives. I think we're just, you know, honestly wasting time on such matters, because you see, political debate and discussion will continue in a democratic environment. And we either chose and must embrace democracy, or we want it to be a modern day dictatorship and we run it around political cultism. Those are the two things that I think we have to decide on. And in my view, in conversations I have with the people of Kenya, we chose democracy, free speech, free engagement, and so on. So people will ask me questions, ask John and Mary and Andrew questions, or say things about them. That means nothing, really. It's just a conversation. People are continuing with their conversations. So I don't know. You know, we want to eat our cake and still have it. Are we a democratic environment? The answer, in my view, is yes. We chose multi-party democracy as a way of practicing politics. And what that means is that we will engage in our various groups and talk. And there will be times when it is necessary to all of us come together and discuss things. Let me give you an example. I was in government. I was a government minister for 10 years. There are times when actually even the president would advise us to sit down with members of the opposition then. And I would call members of the opposition on a particular issue because I know we are going to have disagreements on this matter from their perspectives. And we sit down. And frankly, I took most of their advice very seriously. The classic example I gave in another interview the other day, unfortunately, when a former Prime Minister Raila Odinga passed away, is a case where even when we were implementing COVID measures at that particular time, we of necessity, and the president allowed us to brief Raila Odinga as leader of the opposition on the measures that we were taking on certain places. And I said, I was all the better, and we were all the better for briefing him, because some of the changes we made in the way in which we were approaching those measures were prescribed and advised to us by Raila Odinga. I mean, we are a democracy. So I wouldn't like to spend time on conversations, you know, views, because everyone will be entitled to their own. There's no way you are going to put people together. This politics is not a boys' choir, so that, you know, it's somebody who's going to stand before you and conduct it and say, you know, all of you reason this way or that way. Then we don't have a country.
It's speaking to the public, though, Dr. Matiang'i, because any member of the public, members of Jubilee who are supporting a united opposition, members of DAP-K, of Wiper, of DCP, of PLP who are supporting a united opposition, you may need to explain to them that open disagreements are a thing that is accepted. Because, for example, when the DCP says we had a candidate for the Narok by-election, an MCA ward, and then that candidate decamped and was given, no, we decided not to go with that candidate. That candidate went to Jubilee, and Jubilee gave him a ticket. And then later, he decamped and went to UDA. And we are wondering whether UDA is playing a safe game. When Gachagua is speaking like that as a leader of DCP, he says, sometimes we ask ourselves whether Jubilee is a red wheelbarrow. He has communicated something to the followers of DCP and to the followers of Jubilee. How do you respond to that, speaking to the members of Jubilee and to the members of DCP?
You know, I wouldn't put so much weight on. I mean, that's not something that I can lose sleep about or put so much weight on. I mean, he has expressed himself or expressed an opinion or views that the way he sees life. So I'm not going to stand here and spend, you know, hours on end analyzing our view, you know, because we all have views about things and so on. First of all, some of the
Are you saying, Dr. Matiang'i, that such statements, because they'll continue, that they are inconsequential?
Do you want me to be very frank with you?
Yes, please.
They are totally inconsequential. Because you see, let me ask you a question. The facts of that statement, some of them are actually fallacious. It's not backed by facts. That candidate who's supposed to have come to UDA hasn't come to UDA. And I would not like to discuss those types of things, you know, in the press. Because you see, our belonging to the united opposition is a party decision, which means it's an institutional decision, which was made out of, you know, conscience. We agreed we are all going to work together. The united opposition is a home state, not a house. It's a home state. Everybody's in their house there. We are in the same home state, working on a number of things together and so on. What unites us is the direction we are facing, the vision we have, and the intent that we have expressed of standing together. That does not stop the individual members of Jubilee or individual members of DCP or DAPK or what have you from engaging in the individual party activities like any party engages. Any party has its own activities, recruits members. They could even recruit from each other, you know, in the process. It's a home state. And the journey has just begun. You see, what I find interesting is that when we dwell so much on these kinds of things and even say things that are non-existent, you know, say, oh, there's a crack, oh, you know, the world is coming down, these fellows have issues. Which issues? I don't understand. I don't see them. And you know, for us to finally get there, to that particular destination, it is going to take a lot of patience, a lot of understanding, a lot of engagement, give and take. You see, we forget one thing. We are not the same people. We're not coming from the same background. We are not having the same experiences, same attitude, same visions. The process of building that unity is what is supposed to align all these and bring us together. So sometimes you can have an argument here, an argument there. You have difference of opinion on this or difference of opinion on that. It's not meant to be you arrive day one, is lover's fat side.
You're all on the same page.
An internal deadline?
Have a wedding and move on.
Is there an internal deadline of sorts? Because we're less than 2 years to the election. So is there an internal deadline to when to get this united opposition house in order?
No, the united opposition house is in order. Don't insinuate anything. The united opposition house is in order. And we are working the script as we have agreed. We are going to work the script. You see, we also have organs. We have become an institution. We agreed that the conveners of the united opposition will be Honorable Martha Karua and Honorable Kalonzo Musyoka. That the official spokesperson of the united opposition will be the Honorable Dr. Mukisa Kitui. Now, I also must respect those institutions. There are certain things I cannot come here and say because I don't have the sanction of the united opposition. We have to go and have a discussion. And once we have hammered that discussion, there's a method it will be communicated as we go forward. So in my honest view, that is really what I would like to say. So I would urge Kenyans and all people of goodwill, because I don't think everybody has got goodwill in this matter, to be patient, encourage, you know, the power of positive thinking, think positively about this, encourage each other, and know that we are going to come together despite our differences. Or in spite of our differences. We're coming together is not because we are going to collapse our visions in one day and agree on everything. No, we are going to say, okay, on this, look at coalitions around the world, Israel, Germany, everywhere. My friend, they are the toughest and messiest things that happen in politics. To pull people together, because in some cases it requires you abandon certain positions. It takes time. We are hardly 3 months old. I came back to the country myself about 3 months ago or so. It takes time. Let's build. One thing that is very clear, and I have no reason to believe otherwise, because I don't want to impute improper motive in any one of my colleagues, because I have spoken to my colleagues. We talk all the time. I respect them. Each one of them has got various experiences. When I have conversations with the Honorable Rigathi Gachagua, when I have conversations with Kalonzo Musyoka or Martha Karua or Mukisa or Kirwa or anybody in that arrangement, I see the intent is still the same, that let us find a way of coming together. There is no intent of saying, let's forget our differences and the things we want to do tomorrow and go jump into one bed. No, it takes time. And then that intent is there. That's why I'm confident myself that we will get there. The journey may be tough, the climb may be steep, but we shall get there. We, as a group of the opposition, we will get there.
all of you have said one thing, a similar thing about the current rollout of universal health coverage. All of you, even this morning, you've talked about how this government is implementing it is not the best way. Others have said the same. Regarding WIPA, PLP, DAPK, have all said the same. Assuming that you get to an agreement of what to do with the universal health coverage, is there a likelihood of reversing what's been done so far?
First of all, whatever I'm going to give you is an individual view in my opinion. Yeah. But a lot of this view is shared across the board within the opposition. If you're asking for my individual opinion, the answer is yes. Because you see, to this day, I actually do not understand, and I don't know whether there's a Kenyan who understands, because I don't see government officials themselves demonstrating understanding. You know, the most rudimentary thing for any cabinet minister to do in your life is to look the cameras in the face and answer the question, why you are doing what you are doing. What are you doing and why are you doing it? That is the most primary basis of public policy discourse. You start by saying, why are you doing what you are doing? You describe, first of all, what you are doing and then justify it to the public. I mean, what happens in the discourse, because we expect the government itself to be explaining what they are doing with SHA. What is that? We don't hear so much coherence and articulate expression from them. How is it supposed to work? A clinic near some village near my home, I'm not even sure whether they have power. It's supposed to have built for 93 million or whatever it is amount of money. I've forgotten when I last saw that figure. 19 or 93, some kind of million. So I thought, when did they start doing kidney transplants? And so on, because that amount of money. All these stories that we have read about, the jokes that we have read about how the whole thing is being implemented. You see, the challenge for the government, and I'm saying this with very clean heart, I don't intend any malice, is that, you see, it is possible you can implement public policy with good intentions, then it doesn't work. So the best thing you do is either revise it or come back to the public and engage, level with the public and say, this thing is not working, it has got various challenges, even put together a small team, go cover it and figure out what are the complaints that people have and how can we fix it and so on. But you see, it can't be a situation where we are two societies here. One type of society or one part of society is screaming every day, is asking us, you should be very grateful. We are so intelligent people that we brought SHA. We are wonderful people. We are heavenly. We are brought heavenly wisdom and brought you SHA. Yet on the other hand, everywhere you go in the villages, people are screaming. It's not working. There must be a problem with it. So in my view, okay, we in the United Opposition, quietly we are trying to work on, the best way to go about this is a study that clearly outlines where the challenges have been, and then, making a comparison with that and the reforms that we are working on NHIF, and then figuring out what is the best option forward. So a reversal of either the whole or part of it is absolutely necessary, honestly.
Yeah. I want to ask, there's a lot of questions also coming in on national debt. They're not detailed, but they're like, we need Dr. Matiang'i's perspective and answer on how he views national debt, but how he views how he can get us out of it. Just as you've talked about what you do with SHA, you've said, whether it's an overhaul or whether it's tweaking it, national debt, speak to Kenyans who are asking you, how do we get to a better place?
You see, first of all, I want to come into this with absolute honesty. Because you see, it is not good to lump blame in its entirety on the administration. The administration has made certain mistakes in managing, the debt and going to a particular extent, but I would also be dishonest to discuss national debt as if it's a matter that happened in the last 3 years or in the last 4 years. What I discovered when I was the coordinator of national government project is that over the years since independence, we have managed our debt book and our finances in a very untidy and very reckless manner. The reason, in my view, was because of poor coordination of government over the years. Government ministries, government departments and MDGs operated almost like semi-autonomously. Sometimes the right hand did not know what the left hand was doing. And when we sat down with my cabinet colleagues and said, we want now to sit down and look at our debt book and look at our acquisitions and what has happened, some of the challenges on agreements that have been reached by government agencies are astounding. And look, I would be granular on this, and until the cows come home. But it is, to be absolutely honest with you, that is an area where we have demonstrated the greatest level of irresponsibility in public service. We are supposed to be paying some debt or some fines as a result of very silly agreements that were reached by public officials, some of whom have never been called to account. And you can tell clearly by looking at the documentation that the intention behind those agreements was nothing other than criminal. People were seeking to acquire resources and so on. We've entered into many contractual agreements that are, first of all, untenable, and secondly, are draining on our national resources. Then we are paying penalties and fines in some areas. A classic case is this Lironima Summit Road. Before we left the government, the negotiation on that PPP was complete with some European companies and so on. I don't know, and again, having been a public officer at a senior level, I'm hesitant to impute improper motive, but I must express concern where I see it. I don't understand how and why that contract was cancelled. And the penalty of cancelling that contract was 7 billion shillings in the process. You see, that is where it is hurting us. That is how we are hurting. We're hemorrhaging in terms of our national resources. Then the chaos and the madness we have occasioned in doing what I call digitalizing corruption, the e-citizen platform and so on, and all these contracts we have entered into, all of them driven by nothing but criminal intent. Now, first of all, we need to focus on giving Kenya clean government. That is where it all begins. I may be wrong on this matter. I'm willing to engage on debate on this, and anyone who challenges me. We need to engage in clean government. Clean government means, in fact, one of the things that I'm personally very passionate about these days is reversing that Endeavour report on public servants being allowed to do business and public servants being allowed to engage in business and contract with government. We should actually outlaw it completely. That you choose, because you see those agreements
We've
were
just legally entrenched it quite
exactly
in the conflict of interest acts.
Because you see those things were agreed, the Endeavour report was done, and all those things were done at independence. When we had manpower challenges, it will take you time to get an accountant. So we took a tolerant path to those kinds of things, which now have ended up becoming monstrous, and they're feeding on government. Where senior government officers are engaged in contracts, they're engaged in all this rent-seeking business which destroys government. That is how we blot and build our debt. So that now, one, we address that particular matter. Clean government will also address debt procurement. When you go into signing agreements, and so on, people forget one thing, that even in cases where it looks like a clean arrangement, you're going to get a grant arrangement, there's co-funding that is going to come from the budget and so on. Where is it going to come from? When that is not provided for, you know that down the road you're going to get a problem. So the first solution, in my view, is clean government. Engage in clean, and second, better coordinated government. Where the Minister for Environment is not busy negotiating something about carbon credits, and the Attorney General does not know. The Minister for Finance has no clue. And they are busy flying around signing agreements, and the Treasury has no clue. Then before the Minister of Finance knows, the debt book has grown, and so on and so forth.
From a fiscal perspective, our debt to GDP ratio is terrible. We still need to repay those. What would be your fix? This government came in, clearly their fix was to increase taxes. That was the attempt, failed terribly. What would then be your fix? Aside from, the clean government, I feel, would cut loss, but at the end of the day, it seems that we need some revenue-raising measures, or I don't know what other fix could.
No, you basically you reorganize prioritization. In my view, you reorganize prioritization, and immediately stop spending in areas. To be very honest with you, I know this may not be a very sensitive thing to say, but in my view, I think that. If I were to be so blessed and so privileged to be the one to have the opportunity to run the country, the first thing I think I'll do is fairly radical and tough measures to bring about discipline in the management of government, because that's how we will start dealing with our debt situation in the country. We will have to shave some of our fat in government and stop some of the programs we are engaged in. Then, secondly, Because you see, I think the story of Kenya's indiscretion, fiscal indiscretion, is half told or less than half told. I don't know whether the members of the public really know how bad our situation has been. And the 2/3 of it is brought about, first of all, by corruption, to be honest with you. I mean, if you went into all these projects, Galana, Kulalu, and so on, you will be shocked beyond your life, and so on. And most of those are dead that we have to deal with and so on. So that is number one. Secondly, so shave some of our fat, take very draconian actions, which means some of the things that we do will actually have to end, and then focus on, recovering the country as we go forward. Introduce a measure of efficiency, which means our expenditures will come down substantially, so that you focus on reducing our debt. Then now go into administrative work, because most of our solution to the debt problem is not entirely going to be fiscal. Some of it is going to be administrative. We either have to renegotiate and look at some of the contracts. And the reason why we cannot do that successfully right now is maybe because we don't have the requisite and sufficient trust by our partners to do that. The trust deficit we have is huge, and sometimes people cannot respect or honor our word when we go ahead. So the clean government will introduce that level of trustworthy conduct, and then we'll begin to look at what we are doing. Thirdly, we can look at the exploitation of our natural resources and the natural resources opportunities that we have. Before we left the government, we had done a complete and comprehensive mapping of Kenya's mineral resources, and this has already been mapped. It's available. The next level that we would have gone to is finishing the truthing process, commoditizing it, and going to an international stock exchange to see how the country can benefit from some of those resources, so that they can go into addressing our debt. What is going on now, because the public doesn't know where most of those resources are, concessioning and licensing is being given under the table to individuals. And I dare say, I'm going to be bold here and say that concessioning is being done to people in the administration who are using cronies out there to register companies and so on to come and be allocated concessions and so on. That kind of madness is going to destroy our country. And that is the one that we need to rein in to sort out our country. So that you see that is done in a clean, transparent, and responsible manner, so that then it can benefit the people of Kenya. You see, if you are going to evict people from a particular part of the country because there is rare earth underneath, then acquire the concessions yourself, ultimately it's not going to help the people of Kenya. That is where transparency and fighting corruption comes in. Then thirdly, as we go along, I believe, I may be wrong on this, I believe that discipline is destiny. If we actually are not going to run disciplined government, we will not see an end to the losses and misuse of public resources. Some of these, I can go on this because I was coordinating government functions. I know some of these things like the back of my hand. The work we had started, for example, at the county government of Nairobi, in terms of revenue collection and so on, you could see projections that if we had stayed on that trajectory throughout without interfering with it, we're going to get to a point where the county government of Nairobi would get to a point where they are sufficient in terms of service provision, and they will provide and do certain things without requiring national government to be involved. Now, when that was reversed because of interest and corruption and so on, we go right back in that cesspool of nonsense, where it just, people keep lying and using PR language and so on, yet you can see through what is going on. All of it is just theft and misappropriation of public resources. So that's why I'm saying discipline is destiny. We must socialize ourselves towards that level of creating a disciplined fiscal environment and a disciplined government environment. Then we will be able to systematically, get out of these challenges that we face.
Yeah, it starts with reversing the culture. When you came into our studio, you reacted to this newspaper headline.
Gachagua, Kalonzo.
Yeah, in a bid to change 2027 poll rules. What's your reaction?
Well, I am aware of it. I mean, I'm aware of this. We came together as united opposition and agreed to put together resources and go to court on this matter. And we each contributed and hired lawyers to ensure this. So it's not an effort by two of our leaders. It's an effort by the united opposition. But you see, I understand these games in politics. Even media houses and newsrooms are compromised to project things in a particular way.
What games, Dr.
So it's okay. I mean, today is a day, tomorrow is another day. Let's move on.
What's the contention here that the United Opposition, you have gone to court seeking a constitutional petition, saying that you'd like some things declared from the courts so that they have a smooth running of the next election, particularly the presidential election. Just run us through it. What are the main
No, it's very simple. The main focus is we are seeking the Constitutional Court to pronounce itself on the tallying of the presidential vote. Because you see, the contention has always been who is the returning officer for the presidential vote. Is the returning officer the chairman of the Independent Electoral Commission, or it's the returning officer at the constituents where the voting takes place? And then we feel that to safeguard the vote and to ensure transparency, the counting should be done at the constituents level, and once it's tallied and certified there, that is the result. So that the presidential outcome or result is an aggregation of what is announced and certified at the constituents level. Not to wait for streaming of results from the constituents to Nairobi. Because clearly, if you look at the two presidential petitions that have happened before, the monkey is in between there, where streaming of results, then we start contentions about open the servers, what is in the servers, what was streamed, what was not streamed, from this is interfered with and from that. And I think in the decision of the Supreme Court in the Raila Odinga petition in 2022, there was almost a clear direction given by the Supreme Court that that matter needs to be clarified. And so we are going to go to seek that particular, I don't know whether I'm allowed to discuss this, but anyway, they will forgive me, I am a layman. You see, the argument is that if the results, the counting is done at the constituents level and it's certified there, and then what is announced as a presidential election result is an aggregation from all the constituencies. Chances are, higher chances, that you will protect the result better, or the sanctity of that presidential result will be more protected than when we say, fair enough, you have counted the votes in Molo, send them to Bomas of Kenya. And that streaming now, that trip in between, is where the challenge has always been.
Right.
That
the
is
court
it.
has also pronounced itself previously on the same, that results essentially are final at the polling station.
Yeah, it's a minor KI decision.
Yes. Which one precedes the other? I mean, which one takes precedent over the other?
Actually, we debated that matter of the minor KI decision in our meeting, and it was felt that, you see, the minor KI decision was in place even in 2022, when the late Chebukati, presented himself as the returning officer of the presidential election and issued the result. So we felt, we may be wrong, that's why we are going to the courts. We felt that maybe a pronouncement by the court will then buttress the position and institutionalize it, so that then come 2027, no one goes around it and say, the chairman is still the returning officer. And once an election result has been declared, sasa ni kuenda kotini.
Within 14 days. And, well, the matter has to be decided within a very short time. I want to go back into what you had said as you were talking about discipline in public service and saying corruption in public service is actually perpetuated by public officers who, in some way, are allowed to participate in trade with government. And some of those things that you say you want to reverse. How do we get to a level in this country where one administration, whether at national level or at county level, does not come and completely stop and reverse what had been started by a previous administration, occasioning the public in delays and wastage of funds? You gave an example. You talked about the previous programs that you had started with NEMIS for registering students. That has been reversed. You talked about Huduma, for example, the Huduma project that was reversed. NHIF, again, reversed. Now you also say that if you become president, you look at SHA and see what to work on. How do you safeguard a project that it lives beyond an administration?
Well, first of all, I think, this is part administrative, but also part moral, to be honest with you. It's how people understand government. If you understand government as a responsibility and an opportunity to act in trust of the people, then, as I say, I keep going back to this, you have to make certain sacrifices. And those sacrifices include, when you have taken the oath of office, you have to act the responsibility you hold, not your feelings, not your attitude, not your relations and so on, because that is what makes a difference between successful, effective governments and those that are not. That's why you see in many parts of the world that have succeeded, people handle government as an institutional entity. So it's not so much whether Latif was the Minister for Education yesterday and today it's Fred Matiang'i, or Janet was the Minister for Interior yesterday and today is Fred Matiang'i. It is looking at the institutional functions that you do and what works there. A lot of this has got to do with a lot of our politics, the way we practice politics in our country. That, sometimes it's too emotional, too individualized, and so on and so forth. I've had people these days asking me that, you don't harm a government enough, or you don't insult government people enough. Why are you so slow and laid back? Why are you so, And I keep telling people, first of all, we have different styles of approaching this. I believe in focus to, on the problem and finding solutions to the problems we face, rather than emotionalizing issues and, and entertaining the public with rhetoric and insults and so on and so forth. And we have a lot to do, and that comes from that particular culture. That we all the time have to be conscious of the fact that when you assume government, you assume institutional responsibility. So you cannot say clean the slate, I start afresh. Where programs, you review programs. Where they work, you focus on continuity, because we have a framework of Vision 2030 to work with. Now, I don't see the reason why you have a very remarkable departure from some of those issues and engage in activities that essentially cannot be located within the continuum of what you need to do as you go forward. So the first thing, which you can't legislate, Latif, is attitude and practice. How we practice our politics and the attitude we have towards the offices we hold. But you see, I can speak more about institutionalization of government, so that, government is seen more as an institutional issue, not a personal entity. You see, when you look at the public servants in Kenya, for example, today, and this is why we should deal with this issue, because, public servants today, many public servants today, when you talk to them, they are frustrated. Kenyan workers are overtaxed, overworked, and they know the pay slip is raided left, right, and center. It's as if, the pay slip is the focus of taxation now, and their lives are completely, interfered with. And then the public servants also, many of them will tell you when you talk to them, in addition to the demoralization as a result of poor earnings, the supervision of public service is very politicized, and I've given this example before, I don't mind giving it again. If you go to a ministry, you have the PS, and there are two other people who are called advisors on job group U. And so who actually guides the public servant in that particular case? The advisors are essentially politicians, who have been brought in the ministry. Maybe they are political clout because they have the ear of the leaders of the day, and you vulgarize the whole delivery of public service, and then you throw away meritocracy through the window, and people are promoted on other considerations other than meritocracy. So, and reinstating meritocracy in the public service is one way of doing that, because if you have people assuming positions on the basis of merit, the constant in delivery of public service, the constant usually is the public service. It's the backbone of delivery of public service. So you'll go into a ministry, you are a new minister, maybe you may have been appointed by this president or the other president, but your peers or your directors are people who have been there. They're the ones who will tell you, Mr. Minister, these are the medium-term framework goals that we have. These are the medium-term expenditure framework that we have in place. This is what we should follow. So if we institutionalize government, respect meritocracy, respect the public servants, we have a better chance of ensuring that these disruptions, transitional disruptions, do not exist, because public policy is affected greatly by transitional disruptions.
Okay, we are almost at time. Some critics say you're very powerful in pulpits and boardrooms, but aren't really felt in informal settlements or on the ground. Even now during the by-elections, they don't feel that you're on the ground. What do you think, first of all, do you agree with that? And if so, what do you think you need to do differently for people to know, no, I'm in touch with people on the ground. I'm in touch with people in the village. I am following the by-election. I'm in touch with it. But that's what your critics say. So your response?
Style is the man. So goes the saying. Style is the man. Everyone has got their style, of approaching things. I think our country has been socialized more to euphoric politics, euphoria, and and entertainment politics. Yet, actually, if you look at it, when our country did best, it was when less euphoric leaders were in place. Sure. I can tell you, President Mwai Kibaki made fewer trips in the entirety of his presidency than some people around the country, on top of cars and so on and so forth. Work needs to be done. I've heard this several times from people saying, oh, you are not screaming out there on top of cars. If you arrive, and Janet, let me ask you, if you arrive in the country, you've been working out for the last 2 years or so, then you are interested in running for presidency. Then 2 weeks later, you are loitering around and screaming. What are you actually talking? Where did you hear it? What do you know? What are you addressing in the first place? So you begin. One time,
getting reacquainted.
Yes, I actually remember this very well. One time in the course of my life, I had the privilege of pumping into a conversation. One time I went to see the late Mzee Simeon Nyachae, and he was having a drink with John Michuki. A cabinet reshuffle had happened that time. I dropped something in that conversation which has guided me all this time. They said the best cabinet minister is the one who listens to his technocrats and understands his ministry before they begin. And that actually guided me even when I was in cabinet. If a reshuffle happens today and you are told tomorrow you are the Minister for Public Works, you go to the ministry. First of all, you call everybody, the guys where they socialize you, you understand, you ask sensible questions. Why is this happening this way? Why are we late? When were we supposed to complete this project? Why has it delayed? What can we do to sort this? By the time you open your mouth, you are opening your mouth to say sensible things. And when you take action, you take sensible actions. I honestly think I have had meetings without number and engagements without number. 2/3 of them private, because you see, people want to feel comfortable and talk to you comfortably. Religious leaders, civil society actors, Kenya private sector people, and so on. And it's only been 3 months. And now, when I start talking and the things I say, like now when I tell you about debt and the challenges we face, public servants will not talk to you in public. Some of them will not even like to be known that they are talking to you because you are opposition, given the ecosystem, in the political ecosystem in this country. So you engage in all these conversations and put your pieces together and so on. Now, when you're
doing the groundwork.
Exactly.
So we have to completely wrap up.
Yeah.
We have to wrap up completely, but it would be a crime not to ask this question. The opposition, united opposition, is looking to field one candidate. Would you be willing to step aside if the united opposition wanted to field someone else or to be their deputy?
You see, if I've said this before, it's not a new question you're asking. Because first of all, we have to find out a completely transparent method, undoubtable, scientific, and clearly acceptable method of identifying our flag bearer. If that method is in place and the method is acceptable and it's scientifically proved and it comes out with another candidate other than myself, I mean, what logical thing would you do other than support that particular candidate? We all have expressed our intent on that particular matter and said we would like to have one flag bearer, provided, and this is my question, provided the method and the journey we travel to that is one that passes muster. Because the single opposition candidate will not be my decision. So that I wake up one morning and say, I, Fred Matiang'i, have decided I'm going to be a flag bearer.
Okay.
And that's dictatorship. It will just be a decision, or you know, someone's decision. Latif coming and telling us, you guys have looked at you and have decided Janet is the one who looks like she can be your presidential candidate. It's not going to work like that.
Yeah. Anyway, style is the man. It's been 2 hours with Fred Matiang'i, Jubilee Deputy Party Leader and Presidential Aspirant. Hopefully all the questions, not all the questions, there's still plenty, but hopefully we can have continuous conversations as we get closer to 2027. Thank you so much, Fixers, for spending the morning with us. Hashtag is Fixing the Nation NTV. Continue the conversation online. From myself, of course, Jano, Eric, it's goodbye. We're going over to your world, not a live episode, so we will be going into your world and then into Kwale. There's a lot happening in Kwale, Kwale County. So we'll talk about that as well. Hashtag Fixing the Nation NTV. Asante sana, Dr. Matiang'i.
Thank you.